to another episode of the Grow For It podcast. Today we have another special guest, Brett Klika. He's an elite performance consultant, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and the founder of Energy 100. Brett, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nathan.
Absolutely. Can you start out by telling us a little bit about how you got involved in coaching and how you ended up in that world?
Yeah, it came from sports. I grew up as an athlete, and that was my first love was just about every sport I could get my hands on. Every time I could lace up some cleats or some high tops or court shoes or put a racket or a bat or something in my hand, that was my big thing. And I grew up around coaches. Coaches helped shape my life. And so as I was getting to that point where I realized that school was going to turn into college and then college was going to turn into work, I started to say, well, what fires me up? What's had the greatest impact on my life? And I wanted to coach. And so I started in sports. I majored in exercise science in college. I coached soccer in the summertime to make money. And then I had an opportunity right out of college to be a coach at the U.S. Olympic Training Center here in San Diego. And that's what brought me down here to San Diego. And then after working I left there, I partnered with Todd Durkin, who was just starting then, but he's gone on to work with a lot of professional athletes. He started a gym. I started to work with him. I continued working with professional athletes as a speed and strength coach. But then about in the early 2010s, 2011, I met Dr. Jim Loehr, who is a business leader, and he saw me speak at an event in the strength and conditioning industry. And he said, hey, would you be interested in speaking and helping coaching really corporate athletes? And this was executives, and I had never done that before. And so next thing you know, I tried out for their organization, which was the Human Performance Institute, who was working with Fortune 500s from around the world. And so then I started coaching, shifted from sports to the corporate world in 2011. And since then, I've primarily been working in that corporate space. And I continue to work with organizations, individuals within that organization, and even individuals independent of an organization. So they'll say, hey, this isn't even through my company. This is something that I want to do because I want to ascend, not just in the company, but in life.
That's great. What's your favorite sport then?
I'm a soccer player. I'm a lifelong soccer player, but I love lacrosse. I always say soccer's my religion, but lacrosse is the most fun I've ever had playing a sport.
No, I love it. Well, it seems like you had a very natural transition into the coaching world. You've always kind of been coached, and it seems like one thing kind of led to another from sports coaching into corporate coaching and where you are today. What led you to eventually start your own company within the coaching realm?
Well, I have a lot of I'm a very creative expression type of person. I have to express myself, and in working with different organizations and then working with the content that came out of the Human Performance Institute, it was so inspiring what Dr. Jim Loehr and Dr. Jack Groppel had created. And the more and more people I worked with, I started to form my own insights. Using this content, you would see an outcome, and it's such amazing outcomes. But then I would say, well, hey, I had this experience as a coach with Olympic athletes. I'd like to integrate some of that into it. So I started to create my own content, started to work with my own organizations. And pretty soon I was working with individuals and organizations, kind of blending my content and some of the things that I had learned there, some of the things I had learned as a strength and speed coach, some of the things I had learned from all these different facets of coaching. Because honestly, at the end of the day, performance is performance. There's the application of performance. So you can take these theories of performance and apply it to sports. You could apply it to the corporate world. You could apply it to being a mom. You could apply it to being a dad. You could apply it to being a spouse. So at the end of the day, performance is performance. Tactics is tactics, and tactics are very specific to the different industries. But from my own insights, I wanted to integrate that. And then I started doing that in about 2016, working a lot with my own clients. And when the pandemic hit, as everyone says, it changed everything. And I started to really focus on working more and more with my own clients. And then in 2022, my wife passed unexpectedly. And this created thank you. And this created an absolute necessity for me to be able, I have a daughter. And so I couldn't fly around the world anymore. I couldn't, in 2019, 46 weeks out of 52 were impacted by travel. And I knew I couldn't do that anymore. So I really had to create my own content, my own delivery systems, my own resources that didn't require me to get on an airplane every week and be gone. And so that really, all of those things combined really inspired me to really double down on my own stuff.
Amazing. Can you tell me a little bit more or give an example of when you mentioned that a lot of the concepts of coaching and sports translate over into performance within business or fatherhood? Can you give an example of what that looks like?
Well, anytime that you're looking to coach, you're looking to improve your performance based on the standard. And one of the impediments to that, achieving that standard, often is the pressure and demands from the outside world. So if you're an athlete, you have a lot of games, you have your competitive schedule, you might have risk of injury, you have other teams that are prepared. There's all kinds of things. Well, as a father, I want to be the most available, engaged father. Well, there's expectations placed on me from my career. There's expectations placed on me from my community. So performance is learning to manage those external expectations and still stay true to what allows you to show up as the best version of you, whether that best version of you is required as an athlete, is required as a leader within a corporate world, or maybe it's required as a friend or a son or a daughter or someone in that capacity.
That's great. Would you be able to share one of your proudest moments in coaching so far?
One of the proudest moments in coaching. So it was kind of towards the beginning of the 2010s. I just started working in the corporate environment, and we had a group. It was called an open enrollment. So this group came to Florida, where the Human Performance Institute was based, and it's people from all kinds of different organizations. So it was an open enrollment, and I was coaching, and I had a woman in there who came in as a resistor. Her company had essentially sent her there. They had voluntold her that she needed to go there, and she was very resistant, and we ended up having a lot of sidebar conversations. And day one, those sidebar conversations were very much like, she's like, well, you're all right person. I'm not mad at you, but this is all hokey. And I've been who I am for 50 years. This is not something that, and she actually was an attorney with the organization. And over the next couple days, we ended up having more and more sidebars, to the point where the last day she came up afterwards, she was in tears, and she said, this is amazing. This is something that's really gonna have an impact on my life. Now, if that stopped there, that's happened a lot. And that's, as any coach will say, that yes, they've gone and done a keynote, or they've done a facilitation and they've made a connection, and it's so great. That's why we do it. But she, every quarter since then, and it's been 12 years, every quarter has sent me an update on what now she's in retirement. She's moving into retirement, and it's just how I got to see over the course of that period of time, more than a decade, seeing this transformation happen. Someone who just keyed into the basic precepts of what we shared and what I shared with her and what we had practiced, and used it to create long-term change. And I got to see and be part of that long-term change. And there's many stories similar to that, but that's the one that sticks out.
That's great. And that's really cool to see it over such a long time span. That's great. Can you tell me a little bit more about those basic concepts that you mentioned, and maybe about how that plays into what you developed as Energy 100?
Yeah, so the basic concept, you figure, at the most basic level, if we're going to talk about performance, if we want to perform as a human being, we got to look at, well, what are we made of first? And at the most basic level, we're just a bunch of cells. So at the most basic level of performance, and I don't care if you're an athlete or you're in the corporation or your mom or your dad or whatever it is, when those cells get the the fuel and the recovery and the stress and the building materials and the circulation and respiration they need, those cells are going to perform the way they're supposed to. So that's the first thing. Honestly, it's health. It's what are you doing to self-manage? What are you doing to essentially take care of yourself so you can be at the table with the capacity to perform? Because if I'm doing all these psychological things and this and that, and all these office tactics, yet the machine that shows up to execute these tactics is subpar, they are going to be executed at a subpar level. So the first phase is that biological energy, your health. Second phase, the second precept is just awareness. And awareness can take on many things, but what I'm talking about awareness is your ability for honest self-assessment. And usually for honest self-assessment, we need someone else to help us. And so having something where we're able to assess whatever performance we're trying to improve, we can assess it in an objective way that's not just our opinion. Our ability to be aware of our emotional responses and how they impact others, our ability to be aware of our best personal practices. It's amazing how many high performers aren't even aware of why they're what allows them to be a high performer. They don't stop and say, well, gee, I make a execute list every morning, my top 3 things. They don't even think about it anymore so they haven't really identified what their best practices are, from who they interact with to the different tactics that allow that to show up. And then even looking at the stories we tell ourselves, the narration we tell ourselves, and is it just this opinion? Are we a victim? Are we unnecessarily overbearingly confident? Or can we actually assess the situation and say, hey, so that level of awareness. And finally, intention. And intention comes down to asking ourselves the question, okay, if this is what I'm supposed to do, why is it important to me? Why is it important to the organization? Why is it important to my family? Why is it important to the team? And being able to answer that question, but then kind of combining, well, why is it important to me and why is it important to the team, and combining that mission. And that's what that intention does. So you start with biological energy, then you develop awareness over all these different things, these different aspects of performance. Where do you want to improve? How can you improve? And then finally, when it comes to that intention piece, it's looking and saying, well, why is this important? And what values does this help me show to the world or to myself or to my organization? So those are the 3 steps, and those are really the 3 foundational pieces of the Energy 100 program.
That's great. I think those are 3 different areas that are very commonly misunderstood or ignored, or just completely trampled over, I guess, in corporate America, you could say.
Well, the biological energy piece is that, and that really came from my experience in the sport world for so long. But I was working with people who had worked with coaches, and here they're trying to create performance, and yet they're smoking and drinking, and their health is terrible. They're not sleeping. And you can force yourself for a little bit to do just about anything. But if your system isn't working, you're not going to be able to perform. Now, I'm not trying to get these people to have 6-packs and run Ironman triathlons. It's just a matter of reaching what I call a biological base, where your health is not an impediment to your performance.
Yep. That's great. I'm sure the triathlons and the 6-packs don't hurt, though.
They don't necessarily hurt, but yeah, it's not a requirement.
Yep. What about if you had to pick one thing in your business that's driving most of your growth right now, what would you say that is?
It's my outreach. It's the consistent outreach. So I have a weekly newsletter that allows me, and that has been for the last 10 years. And those outreaches are what continually give me, and if I meet somebody, I can just say, hey, all the stuff you saw up there, I have new insights every week in this newsletter. So if I'm in a room full of 300 people or 500 people, 20% of them are going to immediately sign up for that newsletter before I get off the stage. And then the rest of them over time, those other people that signed up for it are going to share what I sent. And so that's when I see live people, that's what allows me to do that. Now, I'm active on social media. If someone likes me on social media, they see that they can join my newsletter. So that gives me a way, separate from these other platforms, separate from Meta, separate from LinkedIn, who can all of a sudden just take if they want to, they can shut you down. I have my own platform that I can connect with my subscribers and potential clients, can market, and it's just, to me, that's been the most valuable thing. And plus the cost, when you compare the cost of sending a weekly newsletter, which is, it's not zero because it's time and you pay for a service, but compared to advertising on Meta or some of these other things, it just, especially when you have a high ticket item like coaching, it's hard to just depend on Meta to be able to find, or even through LinkedIn. You can have success, but it's a high cost and a long learning curve.
Yep. That's a great way to constantly stay top of mind with a weekly outreach, and also a nice way to kind of develop some independence from the platforms for yourself. That's a really cool idea you got there.
Well, thank you.
What about if, on the flip side, what's been at the moment the hardest part for you running your business right now? The
hardest part of running my business is, and I think any coach could say this, it's just scale. When you go to, particularly when we're working with the upper echelons of an organization, which that tends to be who I'm working with, if I show up and I form a connection with the executive team or something, and then I say, well, hey, great, I'm going to have one of my coaches hop in. They're like, no. Like, we met you, we connected with you, so we want to work with you. So there's limits to scalability. And that's why I have scalable products, virtual trainings and courses and things like that. But that is difficult. And the notion of scale too is I think any coach will say it's client acquisition. Top of funnel, getting qualified leads into your marketing funnels if you use those type of things. Because coaching, anyone can have success with coaching, but it's unique individuals who see the value in it, are willing to invest in it. And when you actually have that coaching relationship, they're willing to take the difficult action required to see change. And so those things can all provide challenges. They're all manageable challenges, but those are the headwinds, I think, of just about any coach.
Yep, very well said. I think that's a very common challenge that most people face. What about with attracting or keeping customers this past year? What's been the challenge there for you?
Keeping customers, I think that with coaching, I think there's even some ethical considerations with that, because you're working with someone, and there's the absolute ethical truth is there's always opportunities for improvement. But there's very few people that have that capacity to continually evolve. It's so hard, and that does not mean anyone is lazy. I'm struggling with the same thing, but to change one small thing. I mean, literally, I'm working with one, he's the founder of a pretty large organization, he's decided his sleep is what's holding him back. And he's staying up till like 1 or 2 in the morning, and it's not work. He's kind of into some games and things like that. And so he's just to change his bedtime in a consistent way. It's taking 3 or 4 months to get consistent with that. Now, once you get that, that's great. But then to say, hey, let's move on to something else, his bedtime still gets screwed up. So I think what's difficult is sometimes you sort of reach a cycle where they're just not willing. It was so hard to do just one thing. They're not willing to move on to something else. Or you just kind of get stuck in this cycle of they're almost there. You set goals month 1, and they got 3% more to go under that goal. And finally, sometimes you reach this realization that they're not willing to right now, not that they'll never do it, but right now they're not willing to go that extra step, and they've realized they're not willing to go that extra step. So to just sort of get on the phone and talk about goals that are never going to happen and to give encouragement, I think encouragement's great, but at some point you get to the point and say, let's take some time here from an ethical standpoint. Let's take some time, regroup, and let's hit it again in a couple months. And that's just one of the things. It's the client cycle and really evaluating where does effectiveness come and when is it worth both of your time to continue the relationship.
Yeah, but I guess on the flip side, if a coaching relationship goes really well, there's a chance they might not need you because it was really successful.
Yeah,
on the other side too, right?
Yeah, they have a specific, and I think that happens right there. In all honesty, and it doesn't come down to the fact that my coaching's so amazing. Is I've learned how to, and we all do. We learn how to find the right client over time, and so I see a lot more now of, well, they achieved their goal that we set out to do. And what a lot of them say is like, hey, let me sit on this because I want to do something else, but let me sit on it and then we'll re-engage in another couple months, because some of these are big things that take a lot of money and time and effort. So like, hey, we were successful in getting this going. Let me do it. And then let me decide what's the next big thing that I want to invest in to change.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at your business and thinking a year or two ahead, where do you see yourself then versus where you are now?
So all my push right now, I recently published my book, Energy 100, Your Journey from Exhausted to Energized. And it's been received very well. It was an Amazon bestseller. It's done actually. I was hoping that organizations would buy it organization-wide. That's happening. And it's happening at a scale a little bit better than I expected. Really excited about that. And so my next step is creating the follow-up materials for facilitation for that specific message from the book. And I have a course. I'm doing my beta course actually being released in January. And then that course will be rolled out in March globally. And then so in 2 years, that course, as well as a possible certification for other coaches who want to be able to deliver that content. And so those are the two things I'm really looking at, in addition to some live events in the next 2 years. Within the next 2 years, I'll have 3 live events and at least 1 course that can be scaled globally.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea, especially with the sudden popularity or quick launch of the book that has taken off so well, to have follow-up items on top of that. So very cool concept you have there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. If you, in your week, could free up 10 to 20 more hours, what would you focus on instead of what you're focused on now?
10 to 20 more hours, huh?
Yep.
Boy, if I had another, if I had another 10 hours in a week, I would designate more time just for free writing, to where I'm just writing as if I was writing the book again. I write about, it ends up being about an hour a day for different things. My newsletter every week has that's a 1 day. It's not a whole day, but that's about a 2 hour to write that. And then I'm writing copy so every day I'm writing. But if I could have another 10 hours where I didn't have to, because as we all know, being a coach, creating content, we love that. At least I do. But it's marketing, it's getting out and connecting and networking and business infrastructure and logistics and all these things that we spend all our time on. If I had 10 hours a week, you're just like, hey, Brett, we're not going to tell anyone else, but we're going to give you a little time machine that you got 10 hours a week. It's just your free time. I'm writing.
That's a great answer. I like that. How do you see, within your specific company or the coaching industry, how do you see automation, technology, AI playing a role in your growth or the change in the industry?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think there's a couple different views on it. I think some people see AI as kind of a threat. Very well could be. I mean, who really knows? I really don't think that the human interaction is at risk when it comes to coaching. I think there's some intangibles that are really important there that I just don't, AI will not be able to cover. But what I just talked about was the logistics of operating a coaching business and the logistics of scaling content and some of these things that we have to do and creating micro content for social media or maybe even within a course, or being able to just load all your information, all your creative, everything that you've done and say, hey, I need a 30-second snippet here based on this. And even where we're at right now with AI, it can start doing that, which saves hours and hours and hours. Email funnels and marketing that used to take hours and hours now takes minutes. And to me, that's allowing me more time to A, coach, but B, create content. Those are the things that I want to do. Those are the things that I'm good at. And that's really what's going to show me the greatest ROI. And that's what I'm going to get to spend more time on. So I think it's going to transform. If you're someone who, if you're a coach and what gets you excited is coaching and creating content, your AI can really help you out.
Yeah. So one thing you kind of hinted at there was that there's coaching, and that's something that you're passionate about. And a lot of coaches get into coaching because they're super passionate about it. And then they realize there's a lot more to running a business than just helping people improve their lives. Was that something you struggled with? And how did you kind of manage that? How do you balance the two?
I did struggle with that a lot early in my career. I had to learn how to market. I had to learn how, and I'm still learning. It's still not my favorite thing to do, you know? And so I had to really take on, school didn't give me that education. I had to take that education on myself. A lot of that was finding mentors who I'm in contact with all the time, who want to see me succeed, so they help me. Reading, I'm an avid reader. And actually, we talk about the extra 10 to 20 hours. Reading would be a part of that too. I would read 2 hours a day. But reading, I've signed up for courses myself. I've signed up for masterminds myself. I've probably paid the equivalent of a second college education in marketing and business infrastructure. And so now that I've gotten more comfortable with that, it is not my core competency. However, I'm competent enough to create that platform so that I can offer the world what I feel is something I have to offer the world. And that's the speaking and the content creation.
That's great. If you had to give one tip to someone out there who's just starting in their coaching industry, or in the coaching industry, their coaching business, what would you say that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Listen, listen, listen. Shut up and listen, listen, listen. And I still work on that. It's because we have the knowledge, right? Like, we're the subject matter expert. They're coming to us. And so there's such a tendency to be like, well, congratulations for working with the expert. I am the expert here, so I'm going to tell you expert things. And I did my expert reading last night, and they're just like buried in information that they can't do anything with. So now I've learned, even with what I've learned, I just ask questions. I don't say, hey, do this. I ask questions until they say, maybe I should do this. That's coaching. Coaching is not demanding. Coaching is, it's not pushing something into someone, it's pulling it out. And that's what I really had to learn to do. And I think that's what a lot of young people or people first getting started, it's critical for them to understand how important that process of listening is.
Yeah, that's great. Be quick to listen and slow to speak, right?
100%. We got 2 ears, one mouth for a reason.
Yeah. Well, that is great. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of great insights. I can tell you're a writer because you're very articulate and you've thought through a lot of these things very deeply. But I guess one last question to leave you with. Where's the best place for our viewers to find more information about you and what you do?
So go to LinkedIn, Brett Klika, Klika on LinkedIn. You can go follow me on social media. I post every day. If you go to www.brettklika.com, you can join my newsletter. Again, my newsletter, 10,000 subscribers. from all over the world. Every Friday it goes out without a miss. It is not a markety spammy. It is content every week that makes you think. And that's how I've been able to connect and have a lot of success.
That's great. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today, Brett.
All right. Well, thank you, Nathan.
Absolutely. Thank you to our viewers. If you found this valuable, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Grow For It. Thank you.